evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Dustin is
Good
here.
evening.
John is here. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, well, let's cut right to the chase. We're here tonight to talk about Black Widow. We're not doing 2 episodes this week. We're going to do 1 full-blown movie hour on this movie. Let's get into it. The film tonight is Black Widow.
Bring her home.
Put your seatbelts on. She's such a mom. One thing's for sure. I'm done running from my past.
All right, so this movie was the newest film, I suppose. It's confusing now, but the newest released film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's been a long time since a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
What's it been since Spider-Man?
Over 2 years.
Yeah. It's been about, wow, goodness gracious. So it's been a while, so it's good to have something new to watch from them theatrically, I suppose. This film is directed by Kate Shortland, written by Eric Pearson, we got a story by credit from Jack Schaefer of WandaVision acclaim. Actually, recently, didn't she get an Emmy nomination like today for... WandaVision got a lot of Emmy nominations.
Yeah, Elizabeth Olsen got one and Paul Bettany.
Yeah. Well, Jack Schaefer is
I think I read it got 23
It got
nominations
23.
total.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
Ned Benson has a story back credit on this movie too. It's produced by Kevin Feige and it stars Scarlett Johansson. What?
No.
Oh, okay. Scarlett
Kevin Feige.
Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, O.T. Fogbinley. I don't know. Olga Kurlenko. It's a name I haven't heard in a while. William Hurt, Ray Winstone, and Rachel Weisz. So yeah, this is the solo Black Widow film that has been long awaited and long promised and long delayed, and now it's finally here. This film was delayed 3 times from its original release in May of last year because of COVID-19. It has broken several pandemic box office records upon its release. It says here it's grossed over $158 million worldwide, and it's been met with generally favorable reviews from critics, with praise in particular for Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh and for its action sequences. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by saying I'm going to give this film 3.5 stars. The film is entertaining. It's well made, it's well acted, well produced. And for all intents and purposes, it's a good film. I think Scarlett Johansson is the best that she has ever been as this character. I think Florence Pugh is also is a huge success here as her sister Yelena. All the other supporting cast members are really good. I'm a bit surprised at the negative response to this movie from other critics. I was talking to Dustin a couple of days ago. It was kind of odd to see some strangely negative reviews of this for kind of weird.
What does it have on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's got an 80, I think.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay.
It seems that we're expecting so much of Marvel movies these days, especially after Endgame, and we're forgetting how to receive films that try to tell stories on a smaller scale. At least that's my opinion of this film. I do think it would have performed and worked better if Marvel had made it and released it during the actual chronology that it takes place in, after Civil War, before Infinity War. But that doesn't negate the merits of the film itself, and I think history is going to prove that to be true. The fact is that Marvel was very, very late to get this film made, and so if anything sticks out about this film, it's this particular failure in itself, not the movie in itself. I do have some small issues with it, but overall, it's a really solid film. It's certainly better than Captain Marvel and other lower tier Marvel films. And I thought of this lately. If Captain Marvel's mistake was aiming low on character and high on integration and connectivity, which I would argue it kind of also failed that. Widow's mistake is aiming low on integration and aiming high on character, but that's a trade that I'll take because that makes for a better film in the long run. So I'm going to give it 3.5 stars, and I'm going to add that it's worth seeing, but not paying the premium on Disney Plus if you're by yourself like I did. I paid $30. I watched this movie by myself, and I can watch it again, and that's all good. But
Disney thanks you.
Disney.
Thank you for your service.
We talked about this, Dustin. Like, you know, that was sort of going to be my standard. I telegraphed that I would do exactly this with this film if it went out on Disney Plus or with any new release. It was like, I know I'm by myself, but I'm going to pay the $30 because I know myself, and I'm going to see it. So yeah,
I have a question about doing that. So do you own the film now, or is it like a 24-hour like rental period? Or
yes and no.
I guess you own it until it comes on Disney Plus for everybody, right?
I have access to it on Disney Plus, and no one else does until it just comes up. So I'm just paying for early access to something, unlimited, repeated early access. So I basically own it until it becomes public for other subscribers. And like I said, it's twice the price of a single ticket. So, you know, dealer's choice. But I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. I wanted to do the first half of the show, no spoilers, just so we can give people a general impression without spoiling story elements. We'll do all that after the break. But you two each saw it in a theater. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So I've got a couple history things with this movie I wanted to touch on, but I'll talk about that after you guys give your ratings. John, what did you give this? What would your star rating be?
I would give it somewhere between 3.5 and 4 stars for me. And I think that was probably buoyed by the fact that I did see it in a theater, and you were hearing those audience reactions in those moments that you wanted to hear an audience reaction. And so it was great seeing an MCU film back in theaters after 2+ years. And I think this was my third film that I saw in theaters since theaters reopened. So this was kind of my first really big film with a huge crowd. So that kind of really added to the whole event atmosphere of the movie for me. But as far as the movie itself goes, I thought that the high points for me were the cast. The supporting cast in this movie is really good. For the most part, I think they padded out the world of Black Widow really well. So every supporting character, with the exception of one or two, is really good in the film, and really helps build that world that we never saw of that character. I thought the action sequences were quite good. I kind of liked that it was smaller scale than something on a cosmic level, like Endgame or something like that. So it kind of like harkened back to Winter Soldier type vibes for me, which I really liked. I don't know why we can't just have a good spy film. I think back in the day, people wanted a film like this with Hawkeye and Black Widow. Yeah. And this is kind of delivering on that. And not everything has to be life or death, crazy stakes or something like that. The smaller stories allow for more character stuff. So that was a welcome change for me. The only downsides that I had with the film were involving a couple of characters. The villain in particular was, or I should say one of the villains, didn't really live up to expectations for me, and felt it was a bit of a wasted opportunity. But on the whole, I thought this was a really crowd-pleasing movie that was fun. I would say it falls towards the middle of my list if I were to do an MCU ranking, but a really solid effort back in theaters for the MCU. So
yeah, I'm right there with you guys. 3.5 is what I initially settled on. My initial reaction was 4. And I came out of the theater kind of hyped because I had just seen a movie in theaters and I had a really great experience. It seems like par for the course for me is like, let me tell you how my theater experience was. It was great. There were 2 other people in the theater with me. They were in the back. They were older folks. So I didn't get audience reaction, but what I got was like a private screening kind of. And it was cool. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, it was just good seeing a movie that is this scale and this scope on a big screen. And yeah, I mean, I have no complaints regarding the picture or the audio. Everything was great. As far as the film goes, I was really kind of taken by it, and found myself really on board with it for a lot of reasons. I do think, as has happened recently on the podcast a couple of times, it falls apart in the third act for me. It is I say falls apart. It does not fall completely apart, but it does crumble in the third act. And you know, I agree with you, John. The villains are a little lackluster. I feel like it kind of harkens back to, you know, phase 1 and 2 of the MCU in that regard. It's like these villains aren't villains that I'm gonna like buy the action figure of, because they don't matter enough, and they're not memorable enough in their motivations and in their like theatricality, so to speak. You know, they're not charactery enough, and which is
disappointing, because one is like tailor made to be an action figure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, but you know, my complaints with the film pretty much lie in that third act. I mean, there are some things that you can nitpick. Like there's a few moments where I'm like, yeah, Natasha should be dead after that. Natasha should be dead after that. Or Natasha should at least have some very grievous physical injuries after this. And she's fine. I was okay letting a lot of that go, which is weird for me. But hearkening back to what we talked about last week, Hooper, we were talking about how, or was it last week? It was when we reviewed the Tomorrow War.
It's really hard to know these days.
It is, isn't it? And we talked about how it's hard sometimes because you have like screenwriter brain and audience brain.
Yeah.
And what I said in that was that if you're really hooked by the film, you can have audience brain. But if you're not hooked, I'm in screenwriter brain, and I start picking it apart on its first run.
Yeah.
I was in audience mode here.
Yeah.
I was willing to let some things slide, like, oh, yeah, she should be all kinds of battered and mangled, but she's fine. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, she's our hero. It's fine. And I let a lot of that stuff go. So I was willing to go for the ride with this film. I do think ultimately the film comes too late. I think it should have been released within the chronology of you know, where it sits in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
I understand why it didn't. Ike Perlmutter, I believe, but you know, I understand that, you know, you kind of have to just put yourself back in the brain of like, oh, I just saw Civil War. Now let me watch this and forget everything else. But this does prove my point that I've been saying for, I feel like, years and years. I seem to keep having these conversations with people where they're like, there'll be like the Avengers, and then they're like, well, I don't know how you get bigger than that. And then they do Age of Ultron, and they're like, I don't know how you get bigger than that. Yeah. And then, you know, they wipe out half of all life in the cosmos, and they're like, I don't know how you get bigger than that.
Right.
And my whole point is, you do not have to get bigger than that. You don't have to. If you look at like the best superhero movies, best of the best of the best, which I know a lot of people think some of what I just said was the best of the best of the best. I still go back to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, or at least the first two, and I'm like, those are super small scale. But they matter because they matter to Peter, and I care about Peter. Or The Dark Knight. The Joker's not trying to turn everybody in the world into a clown, but what matters is, it matters to Bruce. You know, like that's where it really, really gets its gravity. So this kind of proves that point, which is you don't have to go bigger to get me on board. You just have to go more personal.
Yep.
And this is about as personal a story as you can give to Natasha. And I really enjoyed the metaphor of it. I really enjoyed what it said about our world. And yeah, I had a good time with it. Again, crumbles a little in the third act, but it's highly enjoyable. And like I said, I walked out saying that's a 4-star film for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a hot take. So I'll settle on 3.5, but suffice it to say, I enjoyed this. And I know probably everybody listening is like, wait, are you telling me the Marvel Grump didn't hate this movie? And no, I didn't hate this movie. Like I thought it was good. And so, yeah, I'm going to say 3.5 stars, but I do think it's well worth your time. If you have even a passing interest in the MCU, this is a must see. If you have even a passing interest in Natasha, or, you know, a female led superhero film, like, you have to see this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do highly recommend it.
I want to talk real quick about the why this movie took so long to happen. I just have a quote from somebody here, but I basically dug into the history of why it didn't happen. Now, the big section on Wikipedia doesn't mention Ike Perlmutter, but I know that was a factor because he didn't think that a female action figure would sell. And he kind of was in the mix with Marvel and the creative committee until like right before Civil War, I think 2015.
Yeah.
I think it was during production of Civil War,
Yeah,
or at least pre-production of Civil War. Yeah.
That's where it came to a head because
that was kind of the breaking point was negotiations around Civil War.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, and I know that by the time Civil War came out, they had basically changed Scarlett's contract around to accommodate, non-Avengers films. And they had talked about, wanting to get the right time to do a Black Widow movie. And so it was a lot of not loose commitments, but what basically seemed to happen was at a certain point, there was too much emotion with wrapping up the Infinity Saga that there was no longer room or time to do a Black Widow movie. And then they found their way to this story, and Scarlett Johansson got more creative control over it. And I believe she hired Kate Shortland. She's a producer on the movie. So
I think she was instrumental in that decision.
So there was a lot of creative choices here that were driven principally by Scarlett Johansson about what she wanted this character to end up being. They've made a lot of progress over the past few years to try not to over sexualize as a character anymore and try to give her more to do as a character. One of the reasons she's so good in this movie is because she's actually written like a person. And not as like a stand-in character, basically, which is what she has been for a lot of the Marvel movies, especially the early ones. If you look at like a recap or whatever of this character's history in the MCU, it's like looking at two different people. The character and like the other actors, she has sort of kind of molded this character into something that sort of fits her strengths. Downey kind of always was that way, but there's a lot of aspects of Tony Stark that sort of got more and more integrated with the kind of person Robert Downey Jr. is, even since the first film. Same with Chris Evans, same with Chris Hemsworth, and she's no different. Hawkeye, same. So, but anyway, like I said, I was going to bring this up. So they had some stuff going on in the early 2000s because there were plans to make this movie back when the rights were with a different studio before they reverted back to Marvel because it never happened. But at one point they had hired David Hayter to write and direct the film. And here's what he said, why it didn't happen. Basically, here's his quote. He says, "What I tried to do was use the backdrop of the splintered Soviet Empire, a lawless, insane asylum with 400 some odd nuclear missile silos. It was all about loose nukes, and I felt it was very timely and very cool. Unfortunately, as I was coming up on this final draft, a number of female vigilante movies came out. We had Tomb Raider and Kill Bill, which were the ones that worked, but then we had Blood Rain and Ultraviolet and Aeon Flux. Aeon Flux didn't open well, and 3 days after it opened, the studio said, we don't think it's a good time to do this movie." And that's essentially why it mothballed and reverted back to Marvel, who was already gearing up to try and do something with their characters. Just to show you the ripple effect of, arbitrary studio decisions and why whole movies don't get made because other movies don't do well. Just like I said before, and like you said, Dustin, like this would have done better in movie. I mean, obviously it would have performed better because there was no pandemic at the time, but it would have performed better critically. And it would have felt more right to do this before Infinity War because all it does is enrich the Black Widow character. And so I said that I think history would prove it to be true because people will ultimately rewatch the saga, and like us and like others, they'll sort of move some movies around to fit chronology. Like, yeah, we're not going to watch Captain Marvel between Avengers 3 and 4. That's stupid. We're going to watch it first, or second or whatever. But when people go back and watch these films in the order that they happen, they'll appreciate this movie more because they'll go, oh, look at all the context that it gives to Black Widow in a way that maybe they're not seeing now. Can
you imagine the alternate universe that we would live in if this was made instead of Captain Marvel? And so in Endgame, you have like Yelena and the Red Guardian and all of that stuff, like in the final battle against Thanos.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
Yes.
That's about all I got for non-spoilers, to be honest. I mean, people are listening, I would say, I mean, we've laid it out. I recommend it, for sure.
Yeah.
See it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we go to break? We'll come back. We'll talk some spoilers for the next half hour or so. I've got a little bit more info things here to read because I do that now. Anyways, that's it for this half of the show. Be right back. Ubercast Movie Hour. All right.
Spoilers.
What?
Spoilers.
I was about to talk and you fucked it up. All right, we're back. As we said before, we're talking spoilers for the movie. So if you're still listening for some reason, we're going to assume you've seen the film and you want to hear our thoughts on specific beats. So the Red Room being a giant satellite in the clouds, that was kind of silly.
Yeah.
I immediately thought, no one radar. What is this?
No, they told us it was above the radar, man.
Oh, okay. See,
it's above the radar.
I'm cool with stuff like that because the film seems to be drawing some inspiration from like stuff like Moonraker. I think she's watching Moonraker in her trailer at the beginning of the film. So, this weird cloud-based thing, it's like, okay, fine, whatever. It's a comic book, there's a prison in the middle of the ocean too. That doesn't make any sense either.
Right.
So
made me think of Pokemon the movie 2000.
Yes. All Dracoff wanted was that Mew card.
That's all they wanted. And we all got it when we saw it in theaters.
That's right.
I can't think of any particular point of the movie that I find. I guess they're clearly setting up Florence Pugh, for future stuff. We've got the Julia Louis-Dreyfus cameo that was supposed to have been her first appearance in the universe. So it's kind of cool to see her again.
I'm glad it wasn't.
I know.
I think it works better.
It works way better.
Now.
There's way more time. Way more time given to her in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It would have seemed a little too silly here.
The way that was shot was a little strange because she literally just appears and she's right next to yeah. So I'm kind of glad, because I knew beforehand that character was going to be in there. I think Kevin Feige had talked about shifting some things around, and you could make the illusion that was what he was referring to. But I think her character works better in the scenes that we saw her in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But I did still think that was a neat stinger at the end.
Yeah, and I liked finally seeing Natasha's grave and going to that.
Yeah,
I couldn't help but be a little bit I don't know, humored by the fact that we just spent a whole movie that's triumphant. Black Widow, yay! She's walking towards a jet. She's gonna go save her friends.
This character is deceased.
Cut to dead.
Right.
There's definitely some humor in that.
Yeah, I think some people were disappointed that the Red Guardian was not in the film that much. They kind of marketed David Harbour a little bit heavier than he's present for. I didn't have a problem with it because I thought
he was in an appropriate amount.
Me too. And he even said beforehand in his press, he's not a hero. He's kind of just a silly has-been guy. He sort of tried to warn people okay, all this. Yeah. I thought that was cool. I really liked their family dynamic. I love the whole beginning of the film. That's kind of like the Americans, where they're a sleeper. I love the dynamic that everyone knew except for Yelena. She had no idea that she was a sleeper agent until her family split up and she had to go into the program. I
love that they watched DuckTales. That was my favorite part.
That too.
That was my favorite part.
I leaned over to Madeline and I said, "Oh my God, DuckTales!"
DuckTales. Oh my gosh. That's what I put on my Letterboxd review. Was best part of the movie is seeing DuckTales on the background on the TV.
Synergy. Disney Plus.
Synergy.
Yes. Synergy.
I will say though, that was a brilliant way to open that movie because obviously we know that the character is dead and our world, right? So it was a great way to open the movie with the trees and the fireflies, and it was that small scale setup, and then you realized as the scene went on what was happening. I thought that was a really cool, interesting way to open the film.
Right.
And they're getting really good with that Lola de-aging technology. That they used on David Harbour and Rachel Weisz.
I watched The Mummy recently, and I was watching Black Widow, and I was like, "Oh my god!" That's really good.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed the opening credits sequence as well with the "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Yeah, that was cool.
Cover.
I was not sure how people would receive that because,
Well, I liked it because it really set a tone for the movie, and that this is not going to be Thor Ragnarok, or it's a funny movie, and there's definitely humor in it, but it also addresses some real world things,
some sad shit.
Exactly. And that was a perfect tone setter, and
I've seen a lot of people complain about that. I've heard people complain about that, and I'm that track, and I'm like, I don't know. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
I'm a shill now.
Speaking of sad shit, I'll say again, a little too much cursing in this film for my taste.
Oh yeah,
I kind of, yeah. There were times, in a weird way, I would have toned down the swearing a little bit, just because it just seemed a little excessive to me. I guess I should have included that in the non-spoilers because it's really irrelevant in this section of the show. It makes me seem like a doofus.
Nothing
stood out to me, but I'm a deviant and I swear all the time in public, so I have no shame.
Let's see here. So it says in late March, Disney moved the film's release to July 29th, 2021, and announced that it would release simultaneously on Disney Plus with Premier Access. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was delayed again as a result. Kareem Daniel, the chairman of Disney Media and Entertainment Division, said that the simultaneous release gave fans options to see the film while serving the evolving preferences of audiences. Somebody at The Verge opined that Disney had to move forward with simultaneous release for the film because they could not afford to delay Marvel's Phase 4 television series. He explained that those series were some of the few high-profile must-watch shows on Disney+, and once they began releasing with WandaVision in January, there was only so much time that the films could be delayed before the interconnected nature of Marvel's storytelling began causing issues. For instance, the series Hawkeye was expected to release later in 2021 and contains spoilers for Black Widow. I'm assuming the presence of Florence Pugh.
Yep.
So the film needed to be released before then. Gartenberg described Disney and Marvel as being victims of their own success, but felt the potential revenue loss from the simultaneous release could lead to long-term positives, such as fans who otherwise would not have watched Marvel's series potentially discovering them when signing up to Disney Plus to watch Black Widow. Florence Pugh's going to be reprising her role in Disney Plus. In June, Kate Shortland expressed interest in directing another film in the MCU and opined that a potential sequel to Black Widow would likely revolve around a different character in the lead role since Romanoff is dead in present-day MCU. So I would love to see more of Florence Pugh. I mean, we're going to see more of her, but I'd love to see her in more than just the Hawkeye series, and I'm sure that's got to be the plan. This is my first Florence Pugh film, I believe. I haven't seen Midsummer. I haven't seen Fighting with My Family. I loved her here. I thought she was funny. I thought obviously the physicality was great. I thought that her dramatic beats were really good. I'm just overall a fan. I'm excited to see more of her for sure.
Yeah, I think there's. I don't know where you go dramatically with that character from here. I think they're going to have to do some legwork to figure out like what does she need to overcome? Yeah. What does she, so they're going to have to figure that out because it almost feels like she had her arc in this film.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, I'm excited to see more. I think, should she take over as Black Widow? I think that would be great.
Definitely see them setting up something of a Dark Avengers type story going forward with John Walker, obviously, and now Florence Pugh, and I don't know who else. But
do you think her character is going to remain like I mean, she's supposed to go kill Hawkeye now. That's like her mission right now.
Yeah.
What do you think the future is for her character in terms of which side of the What if the episode 1 is her murdering him? She just does, and that's it.
Done.
all those behind the scenes shots from New York with Haley Steinfeld are all fake.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think she's a villain.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd classify John Walker as a villain either. So I think it's kind of characters that can kind of ride that line as to, you can kind of get your hands dirty and they can do things that the typical Avengers can't do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
That's true.
But who knows? It depends on who else is added to that group of people, right? So what characters going forward are going to be enlisted by Julie Louis-Dreyfus? Obadiah Stane.
Obadiah Stane.
Speaking of all this, so I watched the Shang-Chi trailer for the first time before this because I had avoided. I'm just done watching Marvel trailers. I like not being spoiled by anything.
Yeah.
But it felt odd in a theater to not watch it, so I did. Is that the abomination in the Shang-Chi trailer? Have you guys discussed this?
We have not discussed this yet.
So
I have
curious.
not seen the trailer, but I've seen the screenshots
I'm
of
sorry.
it. No, that's okay. No, I saw a headline about it.
Okay. So now I'm like, is he going to be, he could be a contender for that as well?
I think I heard a while back that they were toying with something to give Blonsky to do, but I can't remember where I heard that or when it was. But
right.
But apparently Tim Roth is interested, clearly. So I think I believe he's fighting Wong in that match. Actually,
I think so. Yeah, I think that's what.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Wong is the other person in the cage with him.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, I only saw. Obviously, I couldn't stop it, or so just as it was happening. But
maybe this is Marvel like coming back, where everyone's like, "Your villains are just evil versions of your heroes," and then they're like, "Okay, we'll make a big anti-Avengers team then."
Then they're going to be the heroes. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Didn't think of that
How about
shit,
that?
did you? Huh?
Oh, we flipping the script.
Oh yeah. I said shit. I do that now.
Hey, speaking of that, let's talk about Taskmaster.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about
real
this.
quick too. This folds into Taskmaster, but when I theorized that basically when it was spoiled for me that Julie Louis-Dreyfus was going to be in this movie, I put that together that was going to be the stinger, but I couldn't wrap my head around whether it was going to be Taskmaster or Florence Pugh that she recruits, because I think either one could have fit before I saw the film, and then once I saw the film, So
I got huge Jason Stryker vibes when she first took her helmet off. I didn't realize that was Olga Kurylenko, and there's something about the way her face is shaped that's a lot like the actor who plays Jason Stryker in X2. And I swear to God, for a second, I was like, "Oh, it's Jason Stryker." I was like, "What's he doing here?"
Yeah, no. So with the Taskmaster, first of all, maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I was audience brain. I did not see the twist coming that it was going to be his daughter.
I didn't either.
I did not either.
Okay, I just assumed
I had as a different person the entire movie, and I was convinced that it was this person, and then didn't happen.
Who did you think it was going to be?
I thought it was Rachel Weisz until they did the reveal. But I was convinced that was her. And then, because you didn't really see them in a scene together, and then at one point you did, and I was like, it might still be her. Maybe it's a decoy or something. But I was convinced that it was her for sure. So it was interesting to me. I thought it could either be her or the I forget the character's name, the one who was helping Nat throughout the whole movie. The kind of
the guy from The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I thought
I just legitimately had no idea who it was going to be, and towards the end I started thinking the reveal was that it's going to just be a robot.
Yeah,
like I just thought it's not even going to be a person.
They're like,
because
take off your mask, and he just takes it off, and it's just a bunch of circuits and wires. I'm just kidding. It's a robot. It's a robot.
Big googly eyes on like a bunch of wires.
Sorry, let me do that again. It's a robot.
A robot. So I started thinking, I was like, I don't see anybody in this film that is a contender for that role to me. and so I was like, I guess it's just a robot, or it's just going to be like Clint or something, and it's just going to come out of left field. Yeah. I'm like, it's Liv Tyler. She's back.
Yeah.
And Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah. I was about to say Tim Blake Nelson.
But yeah, so I was like, I don't know who this is going to be, but the reveal was very lackluster because it reminded me so much of what they did to Deadpool in X-Men Origins Wolverine, where it's just like, they don't talk and they're just a mindless slave and they're disfigured and they're not anything like their comic book counterpart.
Well, I thought the reveal itself was fine, but they didn't do anything with it. It could have been any character after that reveal. It made no difference, right?
Right.
So it really didn't matter who was behind the mask because she didn't verbalize anything and she was just kind of a blank slate character after that. So
yeah,
I think it's a little bit of a not a Deus Ex Machina, but it's a little bit of a narrative convenience. Like, oh, thank God, the person who I feel most guilty about killing isn't dead. Woo!
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I
thought the
nothing to be sorry
ending
about
there
now.
was very rushed. The conclusion to that, where she was talking to her through the glass and saying, "I'm sorry." It just everything was happening all at once, and that felt a little tacked on to me. So the resolution of that whole character felt, left a bad taste in my mouth.
The other weird thing is Olga Kurylenko is 5 years older than Scarlett Johansson. So the timeline is a little bit weird. I don't know. Just saying. But
the whole thing was a little wasted to me because throughout the movie, the character is just kind of like stalking and silent. It kind of like reminded me a little bit of the Winter Soldier before you find out who he is.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that had a lot more depth because once it's revealed who he is, it adds a lot of context to that and you care about that character. And also, too, the Taskmaster's whole thing is that the Taskmaster can typically mimic, has a photographic memory, can mimic fight styles. And it was fun picking out which fight style, who he was emulate, or she in this case, in certain moments. But it was never like a feature that they really even discussed. There was never like, now I'm going to emulate this person. It just felt like another MCU fight to me every time that they ran into each other. So I don't think that element was really utilized in the right way.
Yeah, I almost feel like having Natasha say something like, "Man, he's fighting like Steve," and then like calling that out, as I don't know, as telegraphed as that would be to the audience. There's something to say for like, okay, let's strategize against this opponent now, and reference the fact that, hey, sometimes he fights like Steve, and sometimes like Clint, and sometimes like me, and sometimes like Thor, like
T'Challa.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that is a big part of Taskmaster's character, and so to just have him be this blank slate character, they Deadpooled it.
And also too, there was a point I think where it was Florence Pugh said it's like fighting a mirror, and I never got that sense watching those fight scenes that was an element of that. But I will say I did like Ray Winstone's character in a weird way. I thought that was like it was almost like a real world villain through a Marvel lens. And it was like hammy and stuff, but there was like a real evil undertone to the whole thing, obviously. And I thought that the whole scene where he was monologuing and it rode that line right between like corny and actually threatening and creepy. So I thought he was pretty effective in the scenes he was in.
I agree.
I enjoyed that because I thought it was three things. It was real world, it was Marvel, and it was totally a James Bond villain.
Absolutely.
It was all three of those things. And it worked completely on all of those levels. The thing that bothered me in that scene was not the performances, but the convenience of, all right, I'm going to break my nose. And it's like, you lost me there, but everything else is great. It's just like, I was not a big fan of like, you can attack me because you can smell me. And I'm like, I don't know about that.
Why don't you just hold your nose? You don't have to.
Why don't you just walk to the other side of the room and shoot him? Like, jeez.
I thought it was very convenient how his ring was the thing that activated the. I forget what it was that it activated exactly, but she was able to get the ring at some point, and he showed her exactly how to do it. And,
I would have been like, you know where like the secret key is? It's in my butt. It's gonna be tough to get.
I was gonna say, like, I thought at one point, oh, he's got the ring and he's doing he like swipes it or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, are they gonna cut his hand? Are they gonna cut his finger off or something? Like that would be dope.
Yeah.
That'd be so cool. I thought she was gonna cut his finger off and then use the finger, like the severed finger with the ring on it. They did not go that route.
They would have been a good fun time to do like a touch screen joke. Like, oh, there's too much blood in the way of the.
Doesn't read this.
That whole sequence almost reminded me of something out of like a Punisher Warzone, you know?
Yeah.
Before it was part of the MCU, but it was still a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
That whole thing kind of had that type of vibe to it, which I thought was neat. It was a neat change of pace.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the metaphor of it. Like I said, I love that it's referencing something that obviously is exaggerated and obviously is fantastic, but what it's referencing is real and dark and gross and slimy and without saying he's sexually abusing these girls. Like you get the, whether he is or he isn't, the metaphor rings true. There's real abuse there, and it's I always hate when someone's like, it's brave to confront this topic, but it is. And I really did enjoy the metaphor,
especially
of that.
in a film like this where you have millions of dollars and it's a movie for all ages.
Yeah.
And it's a tent pole, and it's typically the sort of stuff that you purposely steer away from in movies like this.
But you have to address it because Natasha's story demands it.
Yeah.
If you had ignored it, it would have felt cheap. But you had to show them in the shipping containers in the Smells Like Teen Spirit montage, and you had to show them being trafficked in that way, and you had to show that their will is broken and that they're being non-consensually controlled. And that is it's dark, but it's real.
There's also a sense of guilt and like a personal, like that she feels like she's partially to blame for this, because they sort of say that, you know, once you bombed headquarters and defected to SHIELD, we sort of stepped up from psychological conditioning, and we just went ahead and invented like this mind control powder shit that, and so she's kind of just like, oh man, like, so this happened after I left, like, it got worse after I left. I can't not do something about this. So it gives her a reason to be on this journey, you know, a personal reason beyond her direct family ties. You know, there's a lot of reasons for her to get involved. And I just think it was one of those movies, like I finished watching it and I'm like, yeah, I was pretty good. And the more I think about like the choices they made, I'm like, no, like anything that felt, I'm having this reaction lately with movies, like anything that I feel like doesn't strike me immediately as like a great choice, the more I ruminate on it, the more I go, no, that was the better choice. It was better that Florence Pugh only spends half a scene trying to hurt her, because it's kind of reductive to have two women oppose each other like that in a film that's all about them not doing that. It might be what we expect and we don't get it. And dumb commenters online are like, there's not a whole lot of action for an action movie. It's like, bro, this isn't the 80s. We don't just blow shit up anymore. You know, we try to give context and character to these movies. And,
see, but I don't agree with that. I thought there was plenty of action in this.
I
thought it was exciting, but it also had those like great moments where I liked where Natasha was watching Moonraker and eating ice cream or whatever that was. And she ran out of gas at the generator and she had to get like that sort of stuff was like the bread and butter of the movie. Like those small moments with those characters. Right. Yeah. But it all, like that prison sequence escape, that was great. Like it had these like inventive action sequences as well.
Yeah.
So
I thought Alexei talking to Yelena after their little like spat was particularly great. Yeah. Not only because it's funny, you know, my dad had to make
so
restroom on my hands or whatever it was.
Right. He's such a terrible father.
like not only that, but like it's touching, you know, to have these characters who they're not related. They're not they're not father
They're
daughter,
not family, yeah.
but
Right.
but they do care for one another.
Yeah.
And I thought that was sweet. The line that particularly stuck with me in reference to the scene where they're fighting, Natasha and Yelena, is at one point Yelena says something like, "I kept waiting to see the headline Captain America takes down the Red Room," and the thought is like, yeah, I mean, had she known, they could have, like, the Avengers could have brought this down.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And women got hurt because they didn't do anything about it. And not through any fault of their own. They were naive.
Right.
They didn't know that it was still in existence. But it's particularly effective that I love the idea that people are looking to the Avengers in this world to save all of the problems in the world.
Yeah, because what they've sort of been doing lately, and a little too much of it, in my opinion, but there's a whole, they've been trying really hard to show the other side of the Avengers. Like, here's all the bad things that have happened since y'all got together. And it makes sense logically to say, yeah, I mean, it's just like internet trolls. It's like, there's people who are criticizing you and maybe they've got a point, but like, there's still plenty of people who would much prefer that y'all are together and doing your thing. And it gives her a really great reason at the end of the film to go, and not just kind of like the cheesy scene where she's like, you know, I realized I had two families and I need to, one really needs my help right now. It's like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Don't do that. But the theme they're trying, I'd almost prefer if they had said more directly, like, it's a mistake for us to be split up. If there's something we can do to fix it, you know, the world is clearly better off if the Avengers are united, and I'm going to go do my part to make that happen. I
love to see when heroes are treated like heroes by characters in the story, and DC just doesn't do that. Like with the Zack Snyder world, I love to see, like, Spider-Man, right? That very first Spider-Man movie, Sam Raimi has the scene where the New Yorkers on the bridge are throwing the trash at Green Goblin. It's like, hey, he's one of us. Yeah. And it's like these moments where the characters, Spider-Man 3, it has a great scene where they give Spider-Man the key to the city or whatever. Yeah. And it's like these moments where we get to see the impact that the hero is having on the world. Matters. That's a huge moment. Yeah. And it allows the heroes to be seen as heroes in the world in which they live. Right. Because if all we ever see is the drama, criticism. opposition, yeah, then why would anyone like this? Right. Superman, Man of Steel, he destroys everything. So in Batman vs Superman, everyone's like, hey, Superman's this big, you know, whatever. And then like suddenly we're supposed to care that Superman's this huge hero. He hasn't done anything. And you've repeatedly showed us that people are afraid of him and hate him. So I don't care.
Dustin, you are forgetting the cell phone video at the beginning of the theatrical cut of Justice League where the little kids run up to Superman. His mouth looked weird, remember?
The incredibly stilted, like, what do you like about living on Earth? The people. I like the people.
Like Fire Marshal Bill.
I like the people. I like Lois Lane. She's my favorite.
That scene is so awkward.
She's real pretty.
It just looks so creepy.
Yeah.
But I like the sentiment behind that. I think, like, what ties into what you're saying, like, DC needs to do that. And I like when Marvel does it too.
Yeah. There's the two kids on the train in Spider-Man 2 who give him his mask back, and they're like, we found something, you know.
We found something.
The whole train. He's no older than my son. Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic.
The Stan Lee cameo where he's like, one person can make a difference. Enough said.
Enough said.
That sounded, your Stan Lee sounded like Willem Dafoe just then. It was so sinister. It's like, you know, one person can make a difference.
You know, you and me, we're exceptional.
I'm something.
Do what you need to, whether a broom or fast.
I'm something of an exceptional person myself. All right. Do y'all have anything to final to say about the movie or anything else?
I will say too, it was great seeing Rachel Weisz in a movie like this again.
Yeah, it is.
She's a fantastic actress, and she doesn't typically do films like this anymore. But I always loved her in the Mummy movies, and I thought she was great in this as well. Actually, a very funny character, which I wasn't expecting. So I thought her and David Harbour worked really well off one another. So that was a great addition as well. I don't know if we'll ever see that character again, but
we got to get Brendan Fraser in the MCU. That's all I have to say. In some way, he's got to be in the MCU.
He had a chance to play MODOK's head. Sorry. He's very. What else could he play? Could he play the Cloud Galactus? What's another large thing?
We don't talk of that Cloud Galactus.
Cloud Galactus.
Cloud, directed by the Wachowskis. Cloud Galactus.
Cloud Galactus.
Cloud Galactus. Nah, he should be Professor X when they reboot.
Professor XXL.
Why are you going all in on Brendan Fraser?
Hooper, my gosh, we love Brendan Fraser at this.
Yes.
I don't understand that. You're trying to get a joke in at a man's expense.
You know, it's like I said, I'm watching.
Do y'all remember his weird cameo in G.I. Joe, the first one?
No. What?
So the first one was directed by Steven Sommers, who directed the Mummy movies. And there's like that movie is not good. The G.I. Joe is not good. The Mummy movies are great. And there's a sequence where they're training all the new characters, and it's a montage.
There
and they
goes.
play Get It On, Bang a Gong, Get It On. While they're training them. And then so they're like, you're being instructed by the best. And Brendan Fraser rolls up on like one of those like futuristic looking four-wheeler type things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I don't know the term for them. And then he goes, all right, we got a tough lineup here. Here we go. Let's see what you got. And then throughout the montage, it cuts back to him and he's like nodding and, maybe they have what it takes. Yeah. And then at the end he goes, There Joe's. And then he rides away on his little scooter,
and
whatever it is.
That's a picture wrap on Mr. Fraser. That's it.
Yep.
I don't remember that at all.
Cut the check. Give me my money. I'm going home.
Nothing about what you said sounds familiar to me, and man. I know I saw that film.
I know that because I saw that sequence like several times from working at the theater that summer. So it was a very forgettable film. Otherwise,
sure.
Also, I don't know. We can cut this, I guess. But did you guys see the Snake Eyes trailer? Did you see it before this, Dustin?
Yes, but I thought it was the Shang-Chi trailer at first, and I didn't watch it.
Oh. Well, it's so bizarre to me that they're like, let's make a character out of one of these G.I. Joe guys. Everyone loves that Snake Eyes guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he doesn't talk.
Yeah.
Well, this is when he did talk. I don't know.
What's his personality like? Hey, fuck you. Who asked you?
Snake Eyes is literally like a
forget
prop,
how that trailer starts.
He's like the cool guy who's like a weapon, and he doesn't say anything. It's like, yeah. He's the guy in the movie.
Yeah,
he's a hero.
This will not be hard to externalize at all.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it's also weird because in that first G.I. Joe movie, they show him and Storm Shadow like fighting as children.
Yeah.
And I think he was Snake Eyes while he was a child. Like he didn't speak either.
No.
Yeah. So I'm like, is Storm Shadow in this? Is this a new
little Snake Eyes?
They just don't care.
It
was kind of like Bumblebee, where they're like, he doesn't talk either. How about he's the focus of this movie entirely? It's like,
I watched only half of that Snake Eyes trailer when I realized, like, I looked up like out of the corner of my eye and realized, oh, this isn't that. And so I watched like half.
You would
of it.
never know it was a Snake Eyes trailer, by the way, until the very end.
And at the very end, he's like standing and he like presses a button and his like visor comes over, and I was like, wait a minute. That doesn't work. The visor just appears because it's visual effects. It just kind of appears from the center, and I'm like, there's no physical apparatus that would materialize a visor in this way. This makes no sense to me.
It's like they do the trailer, and then you're still confused, and at the end they're just like, by the way, this is Snake Eyes. In case you didn't know.
What was wrong with him having a visor and flipping it down like manually? It's not. There's no visual effects. You just have a visor.
It's too analog.
God. Everything's got to be visual effects. How does his visor work? Click, 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 click. It's like a transformer on his face.
Did we lose John?
Yeah, I think he's gone.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I gotta go anyway.
Hi.
All right. That's gonna be it. That's it for the Hoopercast. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back next week. We're talking about Loki.
Yeah.
It's going to be, by the time people listen to this, Loki will be available. The finale will be available. So, watch that. We'll be watching it, and we'll come back here next week to talk about it. Cheers.
Loki.